Thank you, Christine. So because we have just completed a month looking at connecting with the Divine Father and recognizing that energy, as we're moving into July, we're looking at connecting with true freedom. So I'm thinking of true freedom in a couple of different ways. We think of freedom in the United States in certain ways related to our Declaration of Independence and becoming, having the colonies become a separate country from England. But also we have the necessity of inner freedom. And inner freedom is harder to define and easier to lose, I think, than outer freedom. It's very obvious with outer freedom whether we're experiencing it or not, because as more and more restrictions come about, people feel less free. But we can carry bondage on the inside with us, no matter how free the outside is. And conversely, although it isn't easy, we can carry freedom with us on the inside, even when we don't have it on the outside. Abraham Lincoln said, "Those who deny freedom for others deserve it not for themselves." But he also said something like, whenever somebody says that they favor slavery, I wish to see it tried on them. So while I think the truth is that Abraham Lincoln was not necessarily trying to eliminate slavery from the United States, he hadn't sort of taken that on. The American Revolution changed things on a lot of levels, including inside of him. It's kind of like marriage equality came about in the Obama administration because the president's view about that had shifted. And I think that probably happened a bit with Abraham Lincoln over time as well. Not that he was favoring slavery, but that he was not sort of wed to the idea of eliminating it either. And then things happened that changed that. So because last month was, Father's Day, and I feel like I'm ringing a little bit. Do you hear that? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what that means. There, that's better already. So I thought I would tell you something that might well qualify as a dad joke that I came across. So my apologies in advance. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton were sitting at a table in Philadelphia in May of 1787 working on the Constitution. So the Declaration of Independence was in 1776, but it took them a while to get the Constitution together. So 1787, working on the Constitution, right? It was May. It had been a long day. It had been a warm day. Madison said, "It's rather warm in here, isn't it?" "It is. Shall I open a window?" "No, that's all right. I shall remove my jacket, roll up my shirt sleeves." "A good idea," Hamilton said. "Shall we include that in the Constitution?" Madison, "What? That we may remove our jackets and roll up our shirt sleeves whilst we work?" Hamilton, "Yes, but that doesn't sound well stated, does it? Perhaps all men shall have the right to bear arms." Go ahead and groan. It's terrible, I know. But I thought, in honor of dads and the 4th of July, I could get away with it. You forgive me, right? So, you have the right to bear arms. Today, we're talking about freedom as an inside job, always. So, as I was saying earlier, regardless of how free we are or are not on the outside, we always have a choice about what we believe, what we expect, what we hope for, what we're focused on, what we cultivate inside ourselves. That's still available to us. It may not be easy to do that in a restrictive society, but when we step into that, when we decide to choose that, we become way showers. And even beyond that, we begin to cultivate a greater sense of peace and spaciousness and harmony inside ourselves in that process. So I wanted to look up and ask myself, well, what about freedom and liberty? Are those really the same things? Because we use those two words interchangeably, really, a lot when, and even in all the quotes I was looking at yesterday. So I said, well, what's the difference between freedom and liberty? And this is what I found, that freedom is the personal, innate ability to speak, act, and think without constraints. So those constraints could be inner or outer. So freedom is our ability to be ourselves freely without constraints. Liberty is attached more to our lives in society, in a culture. So that definition is the responsible exercise of one's freedom within a structured society bounded by the rule of law and respect for the rights of others. So in order for us to have true liberty, what the definition tells us is that liberty is that we act with awareness of our effect on others. So whereas freedom says, here it is, go for it, without constraints, liberty requires us to take on responsibility and a recognition that we live in a society and we want to have respect for the rights of others as well. Okay, but that's the outer expression. What is the inner expression? So if we have a willingness to share the rights broadly, then we're operating inwardly from a place of advocating liberty and living from that. Our freedom is the level at which we express ourselves within that recognition, how we handle that. George Orwell, who wrote 1984, said, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. And we know how well that works politically for people. Generally, telling people what they do not want to hear means that you're not reelected. So there is a certain mindset about how do we say what needs to be said, or do we? How do we acknowledge what needs to be done, or do we? And what effect does that have on us, on our ability to continue to represent the people, or to raise funds to be reelected, or whatever it might be? And for us individually, that liberty, we may have the ability to tell people what they don't want to hear, but we have to be aware that if we do that, there will be a result that will come about from saying to somebody else what they do not want to hear, right? We've been rewatching for the umpteenth time Ted Lasso, and there is a sequence there where the guys are deciding how they're going to respond to a particular character who has maybe not the healthiest relationship. And they're pretty much in agreement, except for one character, that they should not say anything to him about that because it will not be welcomed and it won't make any difference. But he feels that he must. And even though he's been warned by everybody not to do it, he finally does do it. And the interesting thing is, the man who hears it, although that is clearly not what he wants to hear, he embraces the guy and thanks him, and then he says to him, we shall never speak of this again. And then he goes right ahead and does exactly what he wants to do with his partner. So, was that a useful communication? Hard to tell. James Madison, one of our founding fathers, said, the advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only guardian of true liberty. In other words, an educated populace can continue to be free, but an uneducated populace does not necessarily continue to be free. Benjamin Franklin said, without the freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom. And there can be no such thing as public freedom without the freedom of speech. So now we're back to that original definition of saying what we think, saying what we want to say. And then our founder, Ernest Holmes, wrote, intellectual freedom and religious liberty are necessary to the unfolding soul. Whatever is true is free to all alike. The universe has no pets and no privileged class. In other words, he's saying from the standpoint of the infinite, freedom has been given, liberty has been given to all of us, and it's our responsibility then to use it wisely for all, intellectual freedom and religious liberty. So we look at those things and say, how willing are we to recognize that sometimes this means beliefs need to be adjusted. They need to be upgraded. Sometimes fears need to be unplugged. They need to be recognized for what they are, which is small, little, stay in your place kind of limitations that we can put on ourselves. So when we have that experience of being terrified by life somehow, we are in that bondage of our inner beliefs and fears, and they can bind us much more than what happens on the outside. If a person has agoraphobia and they can't leave their home, that is an inner bondage that's taking place around fears and beliefs that aren't really true in the larger sense. A person who has obsessive compulsive disorder is bound by a compulsion. People who are addicts to whatever are bound by that kind of compulsion unless and until they choose to do something, to move in the opposite direction from that. And it is never an easy choice for us. So we become very attached to our beliefs, not because they're beliefs, but because we think they're the truth. They feel true to us. They seem true to us. So we may have beliefs because our family believed something, and we just grew up thinking that was true because everybody in the family believed it. We weren't really accustomed to people not believing it. You with me on this? Right? We may acquire some beliefs over time from our experiences of life, from movies, from television. We may consider things, or we may buy into something because we're seeing a lot of it, we're hearing a lot of it. It might be from friends or clergy or teachers or clubs that we're part of, and we begin to take on those beliefs. There is a recognition that when you move to a different area of the country, to a different country, that you may not consciously believe and take on the beliefs of that country, but by being immersed in that over the years, you may begin to become more like that yourself. You kind of take on or buy into those beliefs without recognizing that you're leaning more and more in that direction because you've been immersed and saturated with it so much in this new place. Are you with me here? Yeah? Okay, so our beliefs become our mind's map of reality. By the very fact that our human nature is limited, we are limited in time and space, the beliefs that we take on can be changed. They're not complete in and of themselves. So we know already from medical research and so on that positive beliefs have a positive impact on our health and our stress level, even if they aren't true. So the level that belief affects us at doesn't really have anything to do with whether or not the belief is true or accurate, but it has an impact on us. Our fears, I don't know that our fears can necessarily have a positive impact on us unless they, in some rare instance, may save our lives. But most of us are not in danger of being murdered at every moment. So a lot of the fears that we carry around with us are just self-limiting, self-bondage. We may take those on because somebody in our family is afraid of something and we kind of gravitate in that direction too. When I was 7, and we had where I lived in a big apartment complex, 36 acres, we had a pool, an Olympic-sized pool that was built in a particular year. And I was 7, and my mother, who had never learned to swim and was terrified of water, decided I should have swimming lessons. but she did not want me to know that she was terrified. She was even terrified about me having swimming lessons, but she wanted me to have them. So she would sit at the top of this huge, long, 102-step staircase that went down to where the swimming pool was. She would sit up at the top during my lessons. And Mom was a nervous person anyway. She'd sit up there and just hope I wasn't going to drown in the lesson until it was over. Then she'd walk me home. And we had little bits of homework to do. Like, one of the things we were supposed to do for, 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day was fill the sink with water and practice breathing and then blowing out the air and then breathing and then blowing out the air for about 10 or 15 minutes. And my mother was absolutely rigid about making sure I did that for the exact amount of time every single day. Because in her mind, I think, was the idea that if I did not do that, then when I got in the water, I would definitely drown, and that was not going to happen. I didn't know until some years later when she told me how frightened she had been the whole time I was learning how to swim. So I didn't take on her fear of the water. I didn't catch it from her the way that we sometimes do with our parents. We can learn things that we're afraid of as we go to school, as we hear stories about things that could happen to people, as we watch television, as family members warn us not to talk to strangers. We may begin to develop certain kinds of fears that we're learning. And we have experiences in our lives that we don't ever want to have again. Things really scared us. I learned over time that my own suspension of disbelief is a little too good when it comes to horror movies. So I stopped watching them because I carried that fear around with me for days, for weeks afterwards, not being able to sort of get rid of the images. And that was true with certain books I read too, where I thought, okay, I can't read that kind anymore. That has too much of an effect on me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah? So that can happen with our fears as we limit ourselves. What happens when we feel afraid is our anxiety level goes up. And we release cortisol and other stress hormones that are bad for the heart, bad for the cardiovascular system. They can diminish our longevity or our health. The weird thing about this is that we have a choice all the time about whether we're going to step into those fears. I stopped watching those movies because I didn't want to plug into that. I don't know, that's a limiting behavior also. I didn't have the freedom to go and watch a horror movie because of the effect that it had on me, so I chose not to. That was a limitation, but maybe it gave me more freedom in a different way because I wasn't walking around being terrified all the time. So, when I have that opportunity, Thomas Paine said, "He that would make his own liberty secure must guard even his enemy from oppression. For if he violates this duty, he establishes a precedent that will reach to himself." So that's a challenge that says, when you're afraid of something, if you want to guard your own liberty, that which you wish for yourself, you also need to support for even your enemy. Because if you don't treat your enemy in the way that you would like to be treated in a similar situation, eventually you find, on some level, you wind up in a similar situation where you get what you put out. It comes back. So we want to look at, what does that mean? Nelson Mandela said, "For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others." Just like the definition of liberty, in the world that we live in, we have a certain responsibility, if we value freedom and liberty, to ensure it for each other, to object to limitations on freedom and liberty, and to live into it, which may mean that we have to upgrade our beliefs, to make space even for people that we disagree with or disapprove of or who scare us, to also stand for their freedom at the same time. It's a little paradoxical, but it requires us to up-level our beliefs and hopefully, on some level, also our fears. We may need to personally have, good boundaries, but still stand for others' freedom. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "Freedom makes a huge requirement of every human being. With freedom comes responsibility. For the person who is unwilling to grow up, the person who does not want to carry his own weight, this is a frightening prospect." For some reason, this is stuck in my head, and I don't want to say it, so I'm going to. I'm going to exercise the freedom to say something people may not want to hear or I may not want to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. And feel free to disagree with this, of course, too, but when it comes to transgender people using the restroom of their choice, people get nervous about somebody coming into their restroom who may have malicious intent. But it seems to me that the only times I've heard about something like that actually happening were with cisgender people, not transgender people. What I think of is, what if you are a transgender person and you're required to go into a bathroom with people who look like you, but internally you feel out of place. You don't feel like you belong there. You feel afraid. Then what do? Stop using public restrooms so that the terror of that, maybe these are people who have been abused or beaten up at other times because they're not gender conforming. Can we put ourselves in their place? That's a big stretch, I know. But these are human beings, right? Just like us, with reasonable fears that we would have in their position. I don't know the answer to it, but I feel that discomfort. Do you know what I mean? So it may mean that we have to consider, to question, to up-level our beliefs, to confront a particular fear of our own in order to allow people a greater sense of safety. And as we experience that, we too may become less fearful as we see that we appear to still be safe. I could be wrong, but this is my thought. So I just want to put it out as an example of sometimes the need for us to reconsider or look more deeply into something to see what's driving this belief, what's driving this fear. Am I just being comfortably selfish, or is it legitimate, this fear or this discomfort that I have? As I say, I don't know the answer, but I think it's a question worth chewing on. I think it's a question worth struggling with, actually. Benjamin Franklin said, "They who can give up essential liberty to attain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Well, that seems like going a little far to me, but he's recognizing that greater liberty does require something of us. It does require more responsibility or more courage. And John Adams said, and this is the fear side, John Adams said, "There is danger from all men. The only maxim of a free government ought to be to trust no living man with power to endanger the public liberty." That was a pretty big statement. To empower no man living with power to endanger the public safety. And I don't know what he thought that alternative was, but he's speaking about guarding liberty with a certain concern for the future of freedom, for the unfoldment. Now, when we're looking at freedom as a choice, then, and saying, how can we reclaim that? How can we reclaim that larger sense of freedom inside ourselves? I love this meditator because he is so peaceful. And not just peaceful, he is content in his meditation. He has entered into a realm of freedom and comfort and liberty. Now, how do we do that? Well, first of all, hello, where did he go? Come back, my friend. First, yeah, we know that. First, we have to choose. And the choice is not a one-time thing. We have to choose over and over again to come back to that place where we let go of the fears, we let go of the limiting negative beliefs, and we come into that place. We have to choose again and again. And once we choose, then we have to focus on what we've chosen. We have to recognize that that's what we want in order to choose it, but then we have to spend some time with it. We have to actually focus on it. We have to come back to it more than one time. It's got to become a regular practice. Like I said, this isn't easy. It requires consistency. That means we set aside time. That means we don't do other things instead of that. We don't make excuses to do other things. But we choose that, and then we prioritize it. This is more important than whatever. This refocusing on balance and wholeness and freedom and love and connection, this is more important than getting dinner started, or this is more important than whatever it was I thought I wanted to read or finish before I went to do the next thing, to stop and do this instead. And then we need to repeat it. So we choose and we focus. We make that a priority. And we do that again and again and again. And that begins to grow in us a strength within that allows us to continue to choose our inner freedom and liberty, our willingness to hold that good for all people, even the ones that we're the most uncomfortable with, and to stretch ourselves to become more, to grow. And it requires repetition because in the process of repetition, it gets easier. And we're more likely to build it in to who we are and how we operate in the world so that we grow as souls, which is what we came here to do in the first place. When we do that, we come into this place of claiming our inner freedom from bondage, our inner freedom from conditions, whatever they might look like. So I have saved this last little bit for Dr. Barbara Leger because she's going to show you something of the work that is being brought to the kids and the teachers in Ukraine who have been in the midst of war for years now and are working on cultivating this within themselves. So this is giving them tools. So Barbara, come on up. She's going to introduce this for you. And Elsa Joy is also going to come up for the moment here.
She may.
Are you going to sit down, babe?
Do you know how that button works on there?
Come on up here so people can see you. You want to take my arm to come up?
No, I
Or
got
you can
the
do it?
stick, yeah.
Step back, sweetie pie.
Oh, life just is so great when you let people support you. Isn't that just true? Oh, I love that. Okay,
Okay.
I'll take it.
All right. Okay, there you go.
Hi, it's really nice to be here. My hometown, my
Set this up.
favorite perch, the one that you gave me 25 years ago, because that's how long I've been there in Ukraine. I have 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to share something that we do in Ukraine that we're getting ready to do. So first I want to thank this community for the untold miracles that have happened because of you. And you. And Jet. And Deborah. And Joe. And Linda. And Jim Homa. And Rick Wald. And all of you. Frank. The people that have touched our lives in all the little ways. You may not even know what's been done because of you. You may not begin to imagine. And if I had a few days sitting with you, I could share stories that would just make you weep with joy, like I do. So, there's a piece of paper on the table, which looks like that. And the table, the Opportunity Ukraine Club, as we call it now, the partnership table, is over there the first Sunday of every month. And when I can, I get here for it. And when I can't, you all take care of it for me and for us. So I want to just share one thing. I mean, out of the millions of things, well, maybe not millions, over 21,000 students. So that, if you extrapolate from grades 1 to 11, if there's one thing that's happened to each one of them, if each one has been lifted up and each one lifts up just one other, then we've got 50,000 in 6 years. And that is an exponential growth that we are right now on the tipping point of, where that 50,000 that we have can become 500,000 very quickly, because we have been welcomed into and invited into the education department of the country. And that brings with it a huge amount of work and responsibility, and it's based on the freedoms that we put into our curriculum. I've been coming here for, as you have, 20-something years, 25 since I left here, but I come, and every once in a while there's a particular talk that Reverend Mary does that makes me want to have a conversation group afterwards. And I've said that because there's so many themes. This was one of them. Because for me, citizenship was one of my favorite topics in all the curriculums that we would do. And long before the invasion, citizenship was the second to last week. And there's a quote, and I brought it and I forgot to bring it with me. It's at the table, but inside the curriculum, what the children read and work with is this idea that imagine the wonder of waking up and realizing, and then we finish the sentence based on what the theme is. Citizenship is described as that thing which we have a responsibility for and the rights of. And both those things have to be attended to in order to be maintained. They're valued, and when we value them, we serve them. And there's a line in there that says, even when we don't look like each other, or even when we don't like each other, if we are citizens born or chosen, we are there on purpose and deserve the respect and the rights and the responsibilities of all citizens. And I think you did an incredible job today of navigating this moment in time with the clarity of what's the essence of where we are. And this topic would be good to gather online or whatever and really savor with each other. So if anybody likes that idea, come and see me afterwards. So the other thing I want to share with you, besides that wonderful news, we just were in the very first education webinar that the Department of Education puts on in our county. We were invited to participate, and we will be participating around the country with all that we do. Here is a little flyer, and it's the Resilience in the Rucksack flyer. It's where I'm putting a lot of attention right now. And the Resilience in the Rucksack was the answer to a question I asked a year ago that said, the kids and the teachers are falling asleep in school. Why? Because they're running half the night to the shelters or to their basements, which really aren't much of a shelter, and they're not sleeping. Why? Because sleep is weaponized. Why? Because if you're tired, you can't think. And if you can't think, you can't choose. And you can't stand for yourself, and you can't be responsible, and you can't do the right thing oftentimes because you're too tired to think about it. And so it's a great, easy thing to attack. I saw that. I'm a real positive person. I tend to not blame anyone. I don't take sides, or at least most of the time I don't. And the answer to the question was, what can we do to support education and health and wellness to this community that we have? And the answer was resilience in a rucksack. I had no idea what that was. And over the past year, it has developed to the most amazing idea. I love ideas. I get them easily, as many of you know. This is maybe the best one yet. And I think it's going to be on Shark Tank. And not just about how to use it to stay peaceful and find yourself in the midst of war or conflict, but for anything that you want to improve upon. A rucksack for teachers, a rucksack for horse people, a rucksack for history buffs, a rucksack for educators, anything for business leaders. The rucksack is a place where you can put education and ideas and activities in a soft, through the side door, in an unexpected way, and an engaging way, designed for the people you're seeking to engage. In our rucksack, it's very playful. It's not that it's a place to play. It's really big life issues done in a soft, kind, accessible, playful way. So I have two examples. One I'm going to tell you, there's about 40 amazing things going into this rucksack. But I sent Reverend Mary one of them. The first one, though, is, there's so many. Let me just pick one. A 3x3 piece of fabric, colored yellow, no, colored brown. And that serves as three different things. A magic carpet going to any place in the world you'd like to go. A dining room table surrounded with people, any of the people you'd like to spend time with. Or a garden where you'd like to plant all the things that you know you just love. And every one of them is an imaginary experience of choosing, of prioritizing, of knowing what's important, of having conversations with each other, about breaking down the barriers in peer groups, about daring to be seen as yourself, about giving people the rights to their own opinions without assailing them with yours. All of that is built into that 3x3 square of fabric. And attached to that are several exercises. Who would you have to dinner and why? What would you want to talk about? Where do you want to go? What do you like about that place? What would you like if you had those things here? It's filled with educational capacity building, curiosity, critical thinking, and there's hundreds of ideas of things to go in there. So if any of you are like me and you get ideas like that, please send me an email and give them to me, because we're going to circulate them. And this thing is going to reach 350,000 teachers. 350,000 teachers for over 4 million students. Now that is contributing to the world one heart, one mind, one life at a time. Just like we do, but in a different context. And it keeps me way more busy than I really think I should be. But there's nothing else I want to be doing than this. And so please visit us at the table. This little flyer for the Opportunity Ukraine Club says that anything you have, that you do, that you want to share, that you'd like to learn, you can do it with us. So this is something our young college students developed. It's their version of a TikTok meme spark. They named it themselves that, Meme Spark. And it's a variety of really stimulating images with some words. We've made memes out of some of them not yet. The idea is that it goes to the teacher, and in the classroom it can be on the monitor, but in the bomb shelter it can just be on her phone, and she can send it to every student through Telegram. There it is. So let's open it up and look. This one here, the heart and the blue squiggly. A boy in 3rd grade 25 years ago drew that picture and gave it to me. And I use it almost in every class. The idea of Meme Spark is to look at this image and look at the words, if it has one. Potenza, a local artist, made this picture of the heart of Ukraine. So the idea is look at these pictures, and then the teacher stops the music and says, Ivan, what's it mean to you? And Ivan gets to stand up and extrapolate what that picture and what those words mean to him. And then he gets to pick Yulia or whoever he wants to do the same thing. And what it does is it has them look at things, my granddaughter, her mom, her dog. It has them look at things and feel things. Look at the beautiful countryside. It has them talk about stuff that's hard. That's the word peace. Made with our curriculums. Those are our little books making those letters. This is an art piece. We have an illustrator who created that as our symbol. Now, today, kids can't go into the fields because they're all mined. But we can remember what it's like and what it could be like. This is a simple little tool that goes into a bag that the teacher puts on when the air siren goes off. And she has 2 hands to bring her kids there. And when they're there, they get to do things like this that shift their attention from the fears and the things from outside. And this is Elsa Joy, my little constant companion. So these are the kinds of things that I wake up thinking about and doing and creating. And this is how we are breaking down the barriers. And the most incredible thing that's happened in our 6 years of working with the Understanding Peace Project in Ukraine, creating it here, sharing it, doing it there, is that teachers and children's relationships have changed. If you go onto our website, you can read teachers saying things like, I used to love to come to school. I like being a teacher, but now I run to school because my children and I are learning together something that is changing our life. We have love and respect, and I realize education is more than just teaching. Education is creating a safe space where people are free to be themselves. And that's what I want to share with you on this auspicious weekend of freedom. In the midst of war, anything is possible.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Elsa Joy. Have fun down, sweetheart. So let's go ahead and anchor this in prayer. recognizing right here and now that there is one life, one infinite presence of intelligence and love that is everywhere, in everything, always, and beyond time and space. This presence manifests itself as everything, including us. So right here and now, I speak this word for all of us present here and all those present online and all those watching this in the future, that the presence of freedom does not depend on the outside, but the inside. And so I claim for each one of us now a greater freedom, an increase in our willingness to let go of old beliefs and fears that limit our love and our life. And as these are being gently dissolved, that we are open to the greater understanding of wholeness and oneness that is already present and available to us. That we are increased in courage and inner freedom and liberty. We claim these not only for ourselves, but for all people everywhere with love and grace. I release this word into the creative law of mind and spirit with love. I let it go into the heart of God, where it always has been the truth of every one of us. I simply let it go and let it be so. And together we say, and so it is.